it's not good. And then that triggers hot flashes because the person's all stressed out and not feeling well. So you have this kind of a vicious cycle going on in that set of conditions. In 2002, when the Women Health Initiative came out, and women were told incorrectly that hormones could cause breast cancer, but it's turned out not to be true.
Cue music. Places, everybody, places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Sayler. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Now, we don't want you to worry about taking too many notes, so you can join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club, and we'll send you the transcripts and show notes from every episode. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Sayler.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And oh my gosh, we've got a return guest tonight, and I'm so excited because this guy is awesome. His name is Dr. Mache Seibel. And I hope I said that right. Did I say that right? Awesome. Okay. I always have to remind myself, everyone. Oh, you guys all know that I'm a creative speller anyway. And he is an amazing, internationally renowned health expert and leading authority on women's wellness and menopause. And he's got this wonderful philosophy that I wish so many doctors would take up. And that's it, taking care of the sum, S-U-M, sum of you, and not just some, S-O-M-E, of you. So taking care of the sum of you and not just some of you, which, gosh, people with autoimmune seeing so many doctors, you're just feeling like each one of you just sees a little S-O-M-E, just some of you. And so we're going to talk all things tonight. Just a little warning. I don't know where we're going with this, but, just a little warning. If young people are in the listening in, maybe this is one of the shows that we might say, might want to think about it, but we'll keep it clean, but we might just, we'll talk women's issues. How's that? So, because he's an expert in that. And so welcome back to the show. I'm so thrilled you're here.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to just say one thing, and that is vis-a-vis the younger women versus women who are think that they are more likely to be in perimenopause or menopause. A lot of people think menopause is for older women, whatever old means, because the older I get, the younger everybody, younger is not so clearly defined anymore. But I would like to say that while menopause, the mean age is 51, and while the range is 45 to 55, about 5 to up to 10% of women go into menopause before they're 45. And 1 in 100 goes into menopause before they are 40. The first group is called early menopause, and before 40 is called premature menopause. But the symptoms start up to a decade before that. So there are plenty of women out there, millions, who are in their 30s, late 30s, early 40s, who are suddenly starting to have a little trouble remembering this or that. They're having a little bit of heart palpitations. They're feeling a little bit of warmth, can't sleep at night, mood's a little funny, memory's a little off, maybe a little bit of dryness down below. And all of those things could be symptoms of perimenopause, that window of up to a decade leading up to menopause. So it's not just for women who are 50 or 55 or older. It could be younger women.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. And my comment about younger was like maybe under 10.
Oh, under 10, yes. Okay.
If your little people are listening in with you, you might want to think about it, but we're going to run with it anyway. Now, a couple of things came to mind as you were going through some of those topics, heart palpitations, a little bit of change in temperature, etc. In this day of pandemic, my first thought would be, oh my gosh, I've got COVID. I know that sounds weird, but you're kind of going through brain fog is something that I've heard some people get, I guess in this heightened time. And if I already had autoimmune, I'm not sure what I would do. Let's talk about these kinds of things and not letting our imagination run away with this.
Can I make one comment, though?
Yeah.
About vis-a-vis COVID and menopause, just because you connected those two dots. One of the interesting things is that women are a little bit less susceptible to COVID than men. And that is true because estrogen has some anti-inflammatory, antiviral properties. And as a result, if women are just before menopause, when they are still having a lot of estrogen produced by their ovaries, they actually are less inclined to get COVID because it has some protection in terms of the infectious process. Now, that doesn't mean they're immune to it. It just gives them a little bit of an edge in terms of that disease. And it's one of the reasons why hormones have some benefit. And I'm not suggesting people should or shouldn't take it based on COVID, but I just put that out there just because it's kind of interesting because of those two dots that you put together.
Oh, I am great at putting very abstract dots together, as you know. So a dot that just came into my mind about that, though, was not so much COVID, but you said estrogen and the anti-inflammatory process.
Mm-hmm.
Then I don't know if this has ever been researched, but then why are women more likely to have autoimmune, which has a lot of inflammatory process going on, than men?
Well, it's true. And the fact of the matter is that around the time of perimenopause, that window, peri means a perimeter, like the around. So the time around entering menopause, that is when, for many women, it's not limited to this, but that's why many women start to experience those symptoms of inflammatory diseases around that time, is because estrogen levels are kind of waning downward and the exposure is greater. So it's part of the belief why women are overrepresented, particularly in their 50s, somewhere in their 40s, 50s. That's when a lot of this stuff starts for many women, not exclusively, but for many. But that's part of the issue. And so it's likely to show up, or women are more likely to start becoming symptomatic to those sorts of conditions right around that time of life. So you see a lot of women struggling with those kinds of diseases.
Now, here's another off-the-wall rabbit hole. Would some sort of hormone testing be advised if I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition?
Well, if you were a younger woman and you were, and those were your symptoms only, the autoimmune problem, then it wouldn't hurt to test, because you might be entering in towards perimenopause. As I mentioned when we first began, it starts younger than you think. And of course, when some women who are more susceptible to autoimmune diseases, meaning those things that attack the body, if you will, autoimmune towards oneself, the ovary is also susceptible, and the thyroid. And so those are conditions where in certain people, you will find that they have a tendency with autoimmune conditions to have like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and you start to have inflammation of the thyroid glands and the cells that produce thyroid hormone. And actually, probably between 5 and 20% of women have that. And it happens a lot around perimenopause. That's when you see it. Not exclusively, it can happen in younger women, but you have an overrepresentation at that time. And a subset of women will also start to go into early menopause because of antibodies to ovarian tissues. So those are conditions. And of course, thyroid disease, so common in women, has a lot of the symptoms of menopause, because if you tend to be tired a lot more, you might have a little bit of hair falling out. You might have not sleeping as well. You might feel, temperature changes. These are things that are not uncommon in menopause or perimenopause, and they're very common in thyroid disease. So a lot of these things go together, and also diabetes, which is also can have an autoimmune component. And you think about people who have diabetes, they're more likely to have, they can have sweating, feel warmth because their sugar gets low. They could be going to the bathroom and have a lot of bladder sensitivity. They could be having subtle weight gain that they could be experiencing. There's just, they can have clouded memory if their sugar got low. Their mood, irritability could be happening again due to blood sugar levels. And all of these things are symptoms of menopause. So a lot of times these things are happening at the same time, and you don't know if it's A or B, or could be both. So it's good to evaluate that so that it doesn't catch you by surprise, because just because a person has one set of circumstances doesn't mean she couldn't have a second.
Well, it brought to mind that a few years ago, I was talking to my rheumatologist about how much trouble I was having sleeping. And she's the one, well, you know, Sharon, it could be menopause. And I heard the famous women your age.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah, I do. I mean,
sleep is a big issue, you know, because what happens is that in the lowering of estrogen, what happens is estrogen has a lot to do with the thermostat in the brain that controls temperature. So as estrogen starts to fluctuate in levels, and it doesn't just go down, it trends down. It's like looking at the stock market. If you look at the stock market, it doesn't just go straight up or straight down. It does a lot of this. And what happens is during those times, the regulatory system in the brain becomes affected, and the temperature responds just kind of a little bit off. And then what happens is the person will have a great deal of a heat release. It'll cause the blood vessels in the skin to dilate and expand closer to the skin so that you can get more heat off of your body. And then sometimes people will break into a sweat, and then they start to feel the sweat evaporate, and they start to feel really cold. So it's followed by a shiver. They feel this almost cold. So you'll see women dress in layers because it's easier to just take their clothes off. What are they going to do if they don't have layers? They're not going to just strip, you know? So you'll see women, they'll have 2 or 3 layers on, and then they'll put 2 or 3 layers back on. And that's how it is. The covers off, covers on, you know, wax on, wax off. So it's kind of a constant fluctuation. And then that wakes the woman up. So then she is woken up, and then she's tired and not resting well. And estrogen also affects sleep because it affects the amount of REM or REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep. And that's kind of the restorative part of the sleep. There's like 5 stages of sleep, and REM is one of the stages. And during a normal night, everybody goes through these 5 stages of sleep 2 or 3 times all the way through. And what happens is, because the REM sleep is less, with estrogen being lower, that makes the person less restored. So you wake up tired, and that's what happens. And when you're always waking up tired, it's not good. And then that triggers hot flashes because the person's all stressed out and not feeling well. So you have this kind of a vicious cycle going on in that set of conditions. I always say that in 2002, when the Women's Health Initiative came out, and women were told incorrectly that hormones could cause breast cancer, and we can talk about that if you want, but it's turned out not to be true.
Really?
But women ended up throwing away their estrogen just by the groups and groups of millions of women who had been taking it suddenly got frightened and threw it out. And my comment is always, I believe that was actually the start of global warming. Because, I just was really awful, because overnight, estrogen went from the number 1 drug in the United States. It was like a $7 billion drug, and everyone was taking it. And then all of a sudden, fearful for their lives. Like I have to choose between hormones in my life. And it was just like a game of Russian roulette or something. And women threw it away. And now we know, decades later, that they got it wrong. And the reason they got it wrong and why it was so unfortunate is because so many women were on hormones that they couldn't find women to go into the study. And so in order to find women who were available to take hormones and weren't already on it, and the study was for women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. But all the women younger were on hormones. So they ended up comparing women in their 60s and 70s to women who were in their 50s who got the placebo when they first started to need it. So they were comparing 75% of the women, 60s and 70s, to 75% of the women who got the placebo in their 50s. And decades later, after they looked at it, the light went off and they realized that, hey, what happens if they're all the same age? When they looked at the women and put them together that were just in their 50s and started it in their 50s, those problems went away. And it was basically a design error. But the damage had been done because, all this talk about fake news, fake news, fake news. So what ended up happening is everyone heard what was believed to be the truth, that it caused breast cancer. And then when they said, it didn't, everyone said, well, wait a minute, it does. And so even the doctors were thinking that it did. And so that was a vicious cycle. And what happens is the fact that in training today and over the decades, it turns out that primary care doctors get little or no training in menopause, and OBGYN doctors, who you would think would just know everything about menopause because it's women's health, right?
Yeah.
Well, only 1 in 5 programs is offering menopause training. And so as a result, you have a group of doctors who are susceptible to the same news that women are listening to. And when it's confusing, everyone gets confused, the providers and the patients. But it's too bad for women's health because it set women back decades. I mean, we lost a generation of women who could have been benefiting from hormones. And it turns out that when they looked at those same studies, those Women's Health Initiative, the so-called WHI studies, and they looked at it, what they found was even when they looked at all the women, even the older women, everybody, they found out that the woman who got any hormones lived on average 2 years longer than the women who got none. And there's a lot of benefits from taking hormones. I'm not saying you should take them. I'm not saying everybody ought to be on them. Some people maybe shouldn't, but the majority of women, they're going to be beneficial and safe.
Now, if you were one of those that is now in the 60s, 70s and missed out on starting at the menopause time with replacement, is it too late? Is it ever too late to start?
Well,
or did those people just miss the boat?
Let's put it this way. Number one, if you have gone until your 60s and you've not been on hormone therapy, let's say you're 65, and you want to start at 65, then there are some potential increased risks because your body has been aging during that 10 to 15 years that you haven't had hormones. And as a result, there may be a slight more risk of heart disease. There may be a slight more risk even for bladder sensitivity, and there may be a slight increased risk for dementia. There may be. That's what it looks like if you start late. But if you start early, no. Now, on the other hand, let's just say you are a woman and one of your big issues is intimacy. and there's just a lot of dryness down there, and you feel pain, and even the labia rubbing together, and it hurts even to walk or exercise. Well, local estrogen can be taken at any age. Now, that can be done without increasing the risk of either recurrence, even if you have breast cancer, without increasing the risk of breast cancer or the risk of a death from breast cancer if you take it locally. In other words, you put it in the place where it hurts, put it down in the vagina.
Right.
On the other hand, for taking it systemically, meaning by mouth or on the skin or some way where it goes to the whole body, then there's a risk benefit that has to be looked at on the basis of the woman. What is her plaque situation? I mean, plaque, thickening of the arteries because of buildup of fat deposits inside the arteries. What is her cholesterol levels? What medicines is she on? What risk factors does she have? There's things, and it's still possible to be on hormones, but it must be individualized. And that's what I talk about with women when I do either see them as patients or do coaching with them. I mean, people need to have it individualized. You can't generalize. Now, on the other hand, there are also other options besides hormones that can be used. I mean, there's more than one thing you can do. It's not estrogen or bust. That's just one and a very good choice, but there are many other medications. There's new ones coming out that are prescription non-hormones, but there are also alternative approaches that can be used. There are a whole host of things can be used, but you have to individualize and just work with the person.
Well, a quick question came to mind is, how do we know if our medical provider is up to date and aware of all this new information? As I was hearing that, I'm just thinking of one of my medical providers. I'm like, I'm not sure they're so up to date.
Well, you can start by asking them, is this something you see a lot of, and is something that you are current in? Do you take courses in menopause, and are you familiar with the latest new information on hormones? I mean, you have to sometimes just be bold and ask. It's a little maybe awkward, but because it's hard to know everything. And we need to get to the people who are focusing in the areas in which we have need. And it's not unreasonable if you're seeing someone that you really like and they've taken good care of you for most of the things you've needed, to just get a referral to someone who's focusing on menopause and who's knowledgeable in that area to help you alongside for those needs. You have to be an advocate for yourself. That's the point I would make.
I'm glad you bring that up. That's my big thing, and that it takes a team to keep me healthy.
Yeah, it takes a village, as they say.
Yeah. After the autoimmune diagnosis, I found out quite quickly that doctors are not a specialist in everything. And that, bless their hearts, somehow we expected that. And I realized that wasn't true. We need to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more things about women's wellness and menopause and all sorts of other things. As you can tell, he's just an awesome guy. We'll be right back.
Life Interrupted Radio will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by lifeinterruptedradio.com to learn more.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living. A chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Sharon, and of course you know me from here on the Autoimmune Hour. Maybe you don't know I'm also an author. My latest book is for kids. It's Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, a winner of a 5-star Reader's Favorite review. It's perfect for your early reader and a great bedtime story for your young adventurers. Check it out over at pinkychenille.com. That's PinkyChenille.com. See you there. Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com, and tonight we're here with Dr. Mache Seibel, and he is the author of the Estrogen Fix book. It's a great book, and also a great magazine called The Hot Years. It's available digitally. You'll love it. It's got lots of up-to-date stuff that comes out, and it's just awesome. He's also an internationally recognized health expert and leading authority. And so we've been talking all sorts of things about women's wellness and menopause and hormone replacement. Now, we've just been talking about estrogen, but in my memory, I'm thinking that sometimes, there's like you're prescribed estrogen and progesterone, or maybe your testosterone's too high, or some other things. What are the tests that we should ask for, and what do we need to know if there's some sort of combination that they want?
Okay. Well, first of all, if you want to know if you're a woman who is having symptoms and you're just curious, I wonder if this could be the dreaded M word, then you
the capital M word.
You can ask for a blood test for F, like Frank, FSH. And that stands for follicle stimulating hormone. Now, FSH is a hormone produced in the brain, the pituitary gland, and its purpose is to stimulate the ovaries to make an egg into a follicle. In other words, to make an egg ready to ovulate. And so what happens is, as a woman approaches menopause and the number of eggs reduce, FSH has to go higher to get the ovary to listen. And so what happens is, if you take a blood test for FSH and it's elevated, and it doesn't have to be rip-roaringly elevated, if it's, towards the top of the normal range or just over, because that range is really narrow for the best reproductive age levels, then you're probably starting to head towards perimenopause. And if it's quite high, and I'm not going to give numbers because every lab is different. They don't have one standard blood test for every lab in the country. But let's just say it's twice whatever the normal range is. You're either in or near menopause. The definition of menopause is that you are 1 year past your last menstrual period, assuming that you're not pregnant, or you didn't, if you had surgery and your ovaries were removed. Those are where the eggs are and where the hormones are coming from. And so you would go into menopause then, even if you were menstruating regularly before that. If your uterus comes out, whether you take the ovaries out or not, you're not in menopause. If your ovaries are left in and you were menstruating before that, you're still not in menopause. You just can't menstruate because you don't have a uterus. So FSH tells you if you're, approaching menopause. You would also get an estrogen level. That would tell you, and it's estradiol, estradiol. Estradiol is the main hormone that is the estrogen that's produced by the ovary. And if that is starting to get quite low, and I'm just going to say whatever is the normal range, if it's down at the bottom of that, then it's going to reflect that you're getting close to menopause. And those are the two main tests. Now, in terms of having a uterus or not having a uterus, this is an important point to understand. If a woman in a normal menstrual cycle looked at her hormones when she's menstruating during her most reproductive years, she would find that she has two main hormones. One is estrogen, which women know about. That's present pretty much all month long. It gets highest in the middle of the cycle when the egg is about to release, and goes up after that. And then there's a second hormone called progesterone, progestation, about pregnancy. And so progesterone is only produced in any significant amount in the second half of the cycle. So the first half of the cycle is estrogen. The second half of the cycle is estrogen and progesterone. If a woman has her uterus and she doesn't get pregnant, then those two hormones drop down at the end of the cycle and her lining sheds. It's like an Etch-a-Sketch. It changes the lining because the egg didn't implant. And so now you're going to start over with estrogen again, and then estrogen plus progesterone. And that's going to make another buildup of the lining so you can implant that pregnant egg. So if you have a uterus in place and you want hormones, you need to get both estrogen and progesterone. Because if you only get estrogen, the lining will keep building up and building up and building up, and it can turn into abnormal cells over years or a decade of time, even precancerous cells. But if you take estrogen and progesterone, then you will not have that problem, because the two together does what it does in nature, and it just prevents any problem. Now, if you don't have a uterus and because you had a hysterectomy, you only need estrogen. Now, what about testosterone? Because women are wondering about testosterone a lot. And we actually have a whole article about that in the latest issue of the Hot Years, which you can find at hotyearsmag.com. It's there for, you can either get it it's digital only. Anyway, if you want to know about testosterone, sometimes women who have lower libido, and particularly women who are interested in sex, but they just can't have an orgasm anymore, that could be a situation where testosterone would be helpful, but only in menopause. If you're premenopausal and you're making plenty of testosterone on your own, testosterone is not a helpful hormone for you, but it could be in menopause. And that has to, that goes with the history of other things that are happening in your life.
Well, now that took me to a completely different rabbit hole. So here we go.
Here we go.
What I've heard that endometriosis is an autoimmune. Let's first describe what it is. I know what it is, but let's describe for our listeners what it is. And is it an autoimmune?
Well, endometriosis comes from the fact that the endometrium is the lining of the uterus. And in some women, actually in all women, when they menstruate, some of the blood actually goes, instead of out the bottom through the vagina and out, it goes up through the fallopian tubes into the abdomen. And there are a few cells that will get into the woman's abdomen. And what happens is that in most women, they just dissolve and nothing happens. But in susceptible women, those cells will implant either on the ovary, or they could implant on the bladder or on the intestine or any of the surrounding organs, and implant, and then they will start to menstruate each month in that location. And when there's enough accumulation of those cells to form like a cyst, that's the osis part, the endometriosis, the endometriomas. They form a cyst of uterine lining cells that will embed or implant into the tissue that it lands on. And that monthly bleeding causes pain. And it has a cancer-like ability. It has nothing to do with cancer. I don't say endometriosis causes cancer as cancer, but it has a quality like cancer because it can invade into the tissues, and that causes also pain. people who have an autoimmune tendency or who have, that kind of a situation are more susceptible. But whether that's a requirement or not, I don't know. There certainly is a tendency towards it. But the symptoms are often pelvic pain and discomfort that's cyclic. It's monthly and it kind of happens. It could be pain with sex. There may be a spot with deep penetration where you hit that spot, oh, that hurts. Sometimes it's the endometriosis per se, but sometimes the endometriosis will cause organs such as the ovary to get stuck. It'll bring it in and cause it to stick to it. And if it's right at the top of the vagina, when intercourse happens and the penis goes to the top of the vagina, it hits it. And it's like the equivalent if you hit a guy in the testicles. It's like hitting the woman solid on. And normally the ovaries are free and they will just bounce away. It doesn't hurt. But if they're stuck for either scar tissue from whatever the reason, maybe old surgery or some other condition, or endometriosis, then when you hit it, it's quite painful. And so many times women will come in for pain during sex, or they come in for just cyclical kinds of pain. And some women, since they were young girls even, will have missed work each month because the pain's so bad.
Now, I want to cycle back around. What
good choice of words.
If I wanted to think about it, if I'm remembering correctly, aren't hormones used to help that pain?
Well, the trick is this. With endometriosis, remember what I said about how the lining builds up every month and then it sheds.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you're like having a period inside of you, but it can't go anywhere. So it just accumulates into a ball and grows and grows. So the way you treat it with hormones, let's just say you wanted to put someone on the birth control pill. Well, as you know, when women take the birth control pill, they usually take 3 weeks of a hormone or hormones, and then there's a week of a placebo pill where you just get iron pills or just placebo, so the woman can shed her lining and have a period. Well, you don't want that to happen with endometriosis. That's the problem. So what you do is you take the hormones and you take the birth control pill, you throw away those sugar pills, and you just take the hormonal ones all the time straight in a row. And that stops the shedding from happening. So sometimes hormones can be used, birth control pill hormones, which is usually estrogen and progesterone or some substances like progesterone called a progestin, just to give it a category. But sometimes birth control pills are used continuously. In other words, no break for the sugar pills. Now, another way to do it is to give other kinds of medications which actually turn the hormones off completely. So what you're doing is creating, in essence, is a hormonal menopause, a reversible menopause. So you might go on a medication that turns the ovaries off for, say, 6 months to give this inflammatory process time to cool down and to heal a little bit. And so one way is to give hormones that turn your hormones off, but you get the benefit of having hormones so you don't have the hot flashes or anything like that. The other way is to turn the hormones down completely and just turn them off so you have no estrogen that you're making. But that can cause hot flashes and other symptoms of menopause. So the way you get around that is you give the woman a small dose of estrogen with it so she doesn't get bone loss like osteoporosis while she's taking these medications.
And my mind's being blown because part of me, this is just such an amazing balancing act. We are our human bodies are so amazing. What a chemical balancing act that we have to go through. We need to take our final quick commercial break, and when we come back, isn't he awesome, guys? I've got so many questions, and none of them in logical order, and he's so good at just running with it. So we'll be right back.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Change and growth are part of natural life. and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Research shows we apologize up to 10 times a day, and most of the time, we say sorry as a response to someone else's mistake. What if we thanked people instead of all that unnecessary apologizing? So instead of saying, sorry, I'm rambling, you say, thank you for listening. Join us at projectforgive.com, a free, non-religious resource on global forgiveness.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And tonight we're here with the amazing Dr. Mache Seibel. And he's an internationally recognized health expert in women's wellness and menopause. First, I want to give another shout out to the Hot Years, that digital magazine. He's got great information. If you're on video, he's got a picture of the latest episode, the latest issue out. And so I want to give a great shout out to that. Go over and check out his magazine, because it's filled with so much information. And I know a lot of times staying up to date is tough. So I kind of got this list in my head as we were going through this amazing first two parts of the show. And now we're down to the last few minutes. So I want to make sure I get these different questions I have in. First off, I want to talk about vaginal dryness. And we talked about the hormones, but let's say we want to use a lubricant and we have an autoimmune. Are there things that are, I don't know if the right word is safer, but are there ones we should avoid and that cause inflammation?
Well, you're asking an important question. I'll tell you why. This is the original Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Because we find out with vaginal dryness, because it's something, first of all, vaginal dryness, very common. And painful sex, also very common. And we find out that it tends to worsen about 2 to 3 years after menopause, when the hormones have been down long enough so that the tissues of the vagina have gotten no exposure to estrogen for several years. And when that happens, the vaginal tissue is really remarkable. I mean, think about it. It's tight enough to allow intimacy and stretchable enough to let a baby go through there. I mean, that is amazing. And yet, after menopause, in the absence of any hormones, the tissues, which normally are corrugated means like the sleeve of a sock. You know, the ribbing on a sock, how you can put your foot in, it stretches and it comes back, because the sock is got this ribbing. Well, the vagina is like that too. It's got a ribbing on the walls of it. But after menopause, that ribbing flattens. And so what happens is, instead of having the ability to stretch, it can't. It becomes fixed. And as a result, there's a potential then with intimacy, when something goes in that requires it to stretch a little, it hurts. The other thing is that the tissues get thinner, and with thinness comes potentially a mild discharge that is common with women. It's not a infectious disease. It's simply the change in the pH balance. It goes from acidic, which is normal for the pH, to alkaline, which is abnormal, and that causes different bacteria to grow. which are not the kinds of things that are pathogens, but they just cause little discharges. And it can cause bleeding because the tissue is thinner, so it rubs, especially there's no friction. So what can you do about that? Well, first of all, tell somebody, because only 7%, that many percent actually get it treated, because number one, the women are embarrassed to ask, as studies show, or they think their doctor will be embarrassed, so they don't ask, or they think there's no treatment. But I can tell you, I've been to many cocktail parties when the women will come up and catch me in a corner and they will say, listen, I don't know, I know this is inappropriate, but I just got to ask because this is killing my marriage. So preferably not at a cocktail party, but when you go in,
preferably
go and talk about this. And doctors don't talk about it because it takes time to explain it. And also not all are trained in what to do. But here's what you can do. First of all, if you go to the drugstore, there are a number of lubricants and there are a number of moisturizers. Now, moisturizers are different from lubricants. Lubricants is something you just kind of put in there just before you have intimacy, and it makes the friction go away. But most of them don't last very long. So in a couple of minutes, it's dry again. Now, moisturizers are substances that you put in the vagina that can actually maintain the vaginal moisture better. There's one that's called Replens that's available. And that one has these little bitty microscopic spheres in it. And what that does is it causes the fluids on the outside of the vagina to like sweat through the walls. It draws that liquid into the walls, through the walls of the vagina, just like sweat. And it allows the moisture to be in there all of the time. And that's used like daily for a week and then twice a week after that. There are also other products on the market over the counter that you can look at. Now, in addition, there are also, you can use local estrogens, either in the form of creams or suppositories or pills. And there's also a new product that's out also that has called DHEA, another type of hormone that is available, that is metabolized in the vagina, in the wall of the vagina, into little low doses of estrogen and testosterone. So there's several approaches, but there are some, you will get great results from treatment. Even the Replens can help you. It's one of the few over the counters with a number of studies that show effectiveness. But ask and get something done.
Ask your doctors for sure about that, and take down all of these great tips and take them to your doctor. And if you're too embarrassed to ask, just hand them the list, right?
Well, that's a good point you make. I think when you go to the doctor, it's really important. I'm going to make this one comment, and that is, have a list of what you want to say. People forget because they forget to ask because they're nervous. The second thing is, if you're comfortable, go with a friend who can listen, or a relative who can listen with you as a second pair of ears. They don't have to go into the exam part, but the questions they can ask. And then the third part is, don't ask a question that you really need an answer to just as you're about to leave, because there's no time. You have to ask at the beginning, or ask if you can come back and really set up a time to talk about it where you can really get the information to help you with a problem. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen.
And those 3 points, I want you to stress those again, because those are excellent, whether we're talking about our intimacy parts or anytime. When I was at the height of the autoimmune diagnosis, there was a lot, I brought people with me because there was a lot being said that just wasn't registering. And they would take notes and they would comment and they would remember to ask questions, or ask questions in a way that were more understandable. I guess that would be the word. So I love those 3 points. Those are not just for seeing someone about menopause or your female health. All doctors take that to heart, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to mention, if people are interested in knowing more about hormones, the this book has really helped a lot of women. I get a lot of emails letting me know that it's been helpful to them because, and also in the back, the last chapter is how to talk with your doctor, which I think is an important part. But it allows you to understand if you're a candidate for hormones, if so, what kind, how many, how long, when to start, when to stop. But also there are other options, alternatives to estrogen that are also listed so that you can get the information you need about hormones. Because I think that's the biggest fear that women have. Can I take it? Should I take it? Is it safe? Is it good for me? And you should know the answer to that question or those questions because it's your body and your life. And you'll find you feel really good if you can get on that, if it makes sense for you. If not, then find out what else you can take because you shouldn't be suffering. That's the main point. And the last thing is I want to mention, if you go to Hot Years Mag, hotyearsmag.com, you can subscribe to the magazine. We do have a small cost for it because it costs money to put it up, but we get a lot of good feedback and people really like it. It has videos in it and it has, exercise videos, recipes, all kinds of stuff in the magazine. But also I interview the people who are doing the studies at the meetings and interview celebrities. I interview best-selling authors and so forth. So that in those interviews and those discussions are all in there. So you can stay current in ways that you can understand what exactly is happening, because it's no good information if you don't know what the heck it means.
Absolutely. And for those of on audio listening to the podcast, his great book, it's awesome. It goes into great detail. As you can tell, Dr. Seibel really knows what he's talking about. It's called The Estrogen Fix. And it really goes into great depth about estrogen and all of the things that we need to know about it that, like we said, maybe you're afraid to ask as well. And so we're down to just the last 4 minutes. What things would you like to leave the audience with as we're wrapping up here, things to remember as they're moving forward with their wellness and well-being?
Well, if people want to take a short quiz, and find out where they are in menopause or perimenopause, they can go to menopausequiz.com. So they can do that and you'll find out where you are in this system, in this process. But I think the most important thing is that of all the conditions of women, not everyone will get pregnant, not everyone is going to have cancer, not everyone is going to have a baby or have trouble having a baby. But every woman will go through menopause if she lives long enough. It's a natural process. It's not a time to feel bad about. It doesn't mean you're older. You're at a point in which you are wiser. You have much wisdom. You have resources, and you need to optimize your body so that you are able to live the longest, healthiest, happiest life that you're able to do. The way you do that is you have to develop the right habits, because life is habits and getting information that you need. You cannot cram for life. You've got to do it every day. And so finding out the information you need will really be helpful to you. Number 2, make sure you get with someone who can help you, because there is information on all the things that are bothering you, no matter how minor or how major. And the thing is that you can improve the quality of your life. And also it affects your work. It affects your relationships. So you can have those things affected, and those need to be addressed as well. I get talking to a lot of women who might be CEOs or working in companies, and they're affected in the workplace by how they feel that their tiredness is affecting their effectiveness, their ability to get to work on time, forgetting projects they need to do. All these are real things, and they're not something to laugh about or to ridicule about. They are important to know you can do something about. So find out what to do. Find someone who can help you, and realize that here you have the opportunity for prevention in many areas of this. And if you have missed one window, there are other new treatments available for wherever you are. The thing is, ask, and then you will find. That's what I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being back on the show. You're always just a plethora, just a cornucopia of wisdom, shall I say here. I just love it, love it, love it. Everyone, that's drmacheseibel.com. Okay, I'll spell it one more time. drmache.com. That's his website. And I don't have the Hot Years website written down. Please give us that one more time.
It's hotyearsmag.com.
Fantastic. That's his latest baby that he's birthing out for us now, and it's awesome. It really is up to date and covers a lot of hot topics. So everyone, thank you so much first for joining us again and giving us all this valuable information. You can always explain it in such clear ways, and that's what I love. And everyone, check him out and check out his book and the magazine, because they are awesome, and what a great help for us as we travel this life together. I love that you cannot cram for life. That just got me laughing. I know a person right now is cramming for a test, and it just got me thinking about that. Everyone, have a great week. Whatever your adventures, join me next week for another brand new episode. Enjoy.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Life Interrupted Radio will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by lifeinterruptedradio.com to learn more.